Roguelites and roguelikes are some of the most unique games that exist today. Over the past 15 years, we've seen some amazing entries into this genre that often provide incredible visuals with a very satisfying and addictive gameplay loop. But there's an untapped potential to these kinds of games that I often don't see talked about all that much. More specifically, there's a storytelling potential in roguelites and roguelikes that doesn't exist in any other genre of game, but if utilized more often, I truly believe this could create some of the greatest games ever made. But to start, what even are roguelites and roguelikes, and what sets them apart from one another? Roguelites are a genre of games that have really only gained significant popularity within the last 10 to 15 years, but have become one of the most popular and arguably one of the most creative video game genres. They're built around a repetitive gameplay loop of traveling through action-packed levels, dying, learning and upgrading, and going again. Each level is harder than the last, encouraging you to create the best build with your upgrades and resources and take everything you've learned to reach the end. The main difference between this and roguelikes is that the former has permanent upgrades that carry from run to run, and the latter doesn't. They don't represent two binary opposites, however, as there's a sliding scale between the two that we'll get to later. This loop of playing and improving has proven to be an incredibly satisfying experience. And although there's a fundamental simplicity to this kind of game design, there are levels of complexity that encourage experimentation and replayability. A great place to start in the discussion about the potential of this genre is Arms of God. Now, before I dive deeper into this game, I want to bring up a few things of note. It's made by a husband and wife duo team. He continues developing the game while she heads up community feedback and is currently in early access. So everything that I say in this video can be subject to change later down the line. I know the term early access has had negative connotations in the past, but here I think it's more a cause for celebration considering just how good the game is in its current state. You play as a Templar who embarks on crusades to fight demons from hell. Story-wise, it really doesn't get more complicated than that. It's very much just a platform for the gameplay. The game itself is split up into 4 acts, each set in a slightly different location. Each act, or crusade, consists of 15 rounds, which can range from 30 seconds up to around 2.5 minutes. During these rounds, your main objective is to simply survive against a variety of demons, but you also have optional objectives to complete as well. This can take the form of opening a chest, to finding 4 flags, to carrying a big cross, to a big electro circle thingy. These objectives reward you with materials that can be used to purchase both temporary and permanent upgrades. Therefore, it falls more into the roguelite category. When you kill a demon, you can collect their soul, and souls are used as currency. Souls are used to purchase weapons and upgrades in between rounds. The more rounds you complete, the more souls you collect, and the more powerful you become to the point where, by round 15, you're basically unstoppable. This round-based system leads to such an addictive gameplay loop, and again, it's nothing mind-blowing. Many other games have also perfected this kind of gameplay loop. Arms of God just so happens to be another addition to this long list of roguelites that get it just right. The base mechanics of the game get the simple things right but maintain enough complexity to encourage replayability. This is demonstrated predominantly through the choices you can make for your build. There are several Templars to choose from, all with their own pros and cons, which force you to make difficult decisions during each crusade, but it also allows you to play as the Templar that is best suited to your playstyle. For example, if you like a jack-of-all-trades kind of character, then the Warden would probably be the best pick. If you like a walking tank, then the Custos is perfect for that kind of playstyle. And if you like a glass cannon, then the Silent Sister is for you. She's also probably my favorite because of her dodge ability. It's really cool. The weapon variety is pretty decent too. You get 5 weapons, each with 9 upgrade slots, allowing for a lot of experimentation and discovery. You have a selection of melee and ranged weapons that all feel truly distinct. The Electro Hammer is a horde-clearing beast, whereas the Holy Spear is much more about piercing multiple enemies in a single line. The Magnum does high damage to single enemies, whereas the Devastator does decent AoE damage. Again, experimentation is key here. You need to try every weapon out to see exactly which one suits your playstyle the best. You're also encouraged to make smart decisions about which weapons you choose and at which time. When selecting the Primaris, you should probably pick a ranged weapon to begin with because you won't be able to buy one once you start. when playing as the Silent Sister, you should probably invest more in ranged weapons than melee, considering how often you're going to be on the move. The weapons are categorized by damage types, namely fire, electricity, and holy. Each category has its own pros and cons depending on the Templar. The weapon upgrade system is actually not too dissimilar to Roguelike's Pit, which I've also put far too many hours into, in that weapons themselves can be turned into upgrades. At any point, you can either place a purchased weapon into an arm slot or into an upgrade slot for an existing weapon. If it's placed in an upgrade slot, some of the weapon's attributes, including but not limited to its damage, will be transferred over to the selected weapon. Not only is this a great way to craft a specific build, but you can also transform any weapon into an upgrade too. So if you have all 5 weapon slots used up, but a weapon comes up that you really want to buy, you can sell one of your weapons for extra souls or turn it into an upgrade for another weapon, freeing up a weapon slot for your desired purchase. What I love about this system is it lets you change your tactic mid-run if your current strat isn't working. It's almost like a second chance instead of locking you into your previous decisions and saying tough luck when things go south. This, combined with the fact that you can see which enemies and objectives are going to appear in the next round by switching to the Crusade tab, encourages you to craft the best build over the course of the Crusade. What's also really cool is that if you combine 2 of the same weapon, they become an entirely new, upgraded version of the previous weapon. And if you combine 2 of the same upgraded weapon, they get upgraded once again, allowing you to create some truly insane weapons whilst also freeing up space to buy more weapons too. The level of experimentation on offer here is amazing. Not only do you get upgraded, but so does the crux that you carry. It's basically a super techie crucifix type object with an aura around it that can help you throughout your crusading. The crux levels up each round by the killing of pesky demons in addition to the souls that you're not able to collect yourself. You can then upgrade the crux skill tree, which either gives you a buff or can actually damage enemies itself. There's even an upgrade that allows you to pick it up and carry it around with you, but it does sacrifice speed for all but one of the Templars. If you have low health regeneration or have more of a tanky Templar, this can be a lifesaver, but for faster, more glass cannon builds, I don't rely on the crux all too much outside of boss battles. With regards to non-weapon related upgrades, you have your standard damage and health increases, but you also have weapon specific upgrades that, for the most part, have a sacrifice as well as a benefit that encourages you to pick a certain upgrade path. If you pick an upgrade that increases holy damage and decreases electricity damage quite early on, then you should probably invest in holy weapons. It also encourages experimentation to see what combination of Templar, weapon, and upgrade path yields the best outcome. Personally, I found that investing in electricity weapons, stun or freeze upgrades, HP recharge and delay, combined with Voltaris or the Silent Sister, makes for one of the best builds in the game. Once everything clicks into place, you really do become an unstoppable machine, and it's really satisfying seeing the culmination of all of your choices working synergistically with one another. Once you complete a crusade, you can invest resources into permanent upgrades, as well as weapons and upgrades that once purchased have a chance of appearing in the rotation of any given crusade as an available purchase. You can also refund any of these purchases, and you can even use resources to prevent certain upgrades from appearing during crusades. For example, I've blocked any upgrade that sacrifices health or let's say armor or speed because I know that I simply would never pick that kind of upgrade during a crusade. That being said, sometimes there's an incentive to pick these kinds of upgrades. The Silent Sister's speed and dodge increase as her armor decreases, so it's worth keeping that kind of upgrade in rotation when playing as her. All of these aspects of the game's design are really quite simple, but that's what makes it satisfying and easy to use. The complexity that it does have comes in the form of how you construct your build for each run, and the game gives you the relevant information for you to prepare every single time you start a new run, as well as being able to change your tactic mid-crusade if need be. Again, nothing revolutionary here, just simple design with enough complexity to keep you coming back again and again. Although I've praised the gameplay and the game mechanics, they are very similar to a lot of other games. Arms of God isn't unique in this regard at all. What makes this game stand out is the art style, the sound design, and the soundtrack. The Templars look so cool, and having the mechanical arms is such a nice touch. They're tech Templars, it's kind of the rule of cool. Each Templar is also designed in a way to really underline their specific characteristics. Also, the music is amazing. It's so much better than I thought it was going to be. Some tracks are straight up just heavy metal, whereas others have a Matrix feel to them. It's very Doom inspired for sure as well. But there are times where I found myself bopping my head while playing because the soundtrack is just insanely hype. I want to shout out specifically Let's Get the Slaughter Started, which is a crazy name for a track. And Boss Fight. They both go pretty hard, I can't lie. The sound design is also really satisfying. There's this kind of crunch and heft to the weapons that really underlines their power, but there's also a specific sound design choice when killing enemies that reminds me a bit of Tower Wizard. In my video about the Cozy Tower Builder, I mentioned the popping sound effect and how satisfying it was, especially later on in the game when it's happening a mile a minute, and Arms of God has a really similar effect, incorporating elements of incremental games to give that rapid-fire dopamine hit that never gets old. The sound design mixed with the soundtrack really is the backbone of the experience. I mean, just listen to this utter chaos. In an IGN video promoting Arms of God, Dominik Soyka, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, I'm sorry if I'm not, the main dev of the game, is not only quite open about the influences for Arms of God, but also states that it adds a narrative layer specific to the setting. But I'd say that this supposed narrative layer is actually quite lackluster. Each act of the game takes place in a different location, but all you're really doing is going deeper into hell, and that's kind of it. There's so much untapped potential to really expand the lore here. What caused the apocalypse exactly? What are the origins for this sci-fi Templar order? What exactly is the crux? There's a codex, sure, but it doesn't really flesh out the backstory behind the enemies or items that are in there besides some nods here and there to the apocalypse. This is such an interesting setting, mixing aesthetics from Doom and Warhammer and countless other influences. And yet these influences don't seem to extend beyond aesthetics. The obvious question, therefore, is what would it look like? How could a roguelite introduce narrative elements to expand the lore and world building to really immerse the player in the setting?
Welcome to the House of Hades, where... Wait, I know you. Guess that means you died out there, huh?
No, wait. Oh, no.
Well, don't be sad, though. Pretty much everybody dies sometime.
Some of us more than others.
This game is phenomenal. It takes the satisfying gameplay, incredible art direction, and impressive sound design of Arms of God and places it into a setting with interesting world building and well-written characters. It tells the story of Zagreus, son of Hades, as he attempts to escape the underworld and get to the surface. He has to fight through different sections of the underworld to get there, and each time he dies, he starts back down at the very bottom. With the help of his friends, as well as the gods and goddesses of Olympus, Zagreus gets stronger and more capable with each escape attempt. This game is filled to the brim with personality. Each character is so unique and quirky in their own distinct ways, not only in dialogue and voice acting, which are both phenomenal, but also in their character design. Each level is beautifully designed, with a cartoonish comic book art style and stunning color palette. Narratively, the story is told in a really interesting way. We're not told right away why exactly Zagreus wants to escape the underworld, but it's clear off the bat that he has a complicated relationship with his father. Not only that, but it's really telling that most of the characters you meet in the hub area are rooting for you. Even when you speak to Meg after defeating her, she seems really uncertain about her loyalty to Hades. Despite the lavish aesthetics, you realize how much of a gilded cage this hellish paradise must be. Not Cerberus though, he's the best. And if you don't pet him every time you see him, you are dead to me. Also, I really love Skelly. This dude just takes it, and honestly, he doesn't seem to mind. If anything, he seems to enjoy it. He's really in it for the love of the game. The complexity of the gameplay, combined with the level of decision making, leads to a satisfying level of difficulty that is sorely missing from Arms of God. There's a small selection of weapons to choose from, and they all play very differently from one another, incentivizing the player to use the one that matches their playstyle the best. You have much more control over the direction and intensity of your attacks, and the game requires quite a lot of precision from the player. You can't just wander around levels collecting items. You need to properly lock in here because you can die very quickly. You have your standard attack, special attack, and dodge, but you also have a cast ability, which results in a debuff to whichever enemy it hits. Considering the fact that many temporary upgrades allow your dash to do damage too, you have to combine your abilities precisely to make sure you're getting the most out of your build. For example, using the default sword encourages more of an aggressive build, considering the basic attacks are quite fast and the special attack does AoE damage. So you'd probably want to get up close and then have the bladed dodge attack that Ares provides. With the bow and arrow, you're more likely to be playing the game a little bit slower, keeping your distance and using powerful charge shots, so you'd ideally want to be on the move often but playing the game a little bit more passively. Using the shield is almost a middle ground between the two, as the charged attack blocks projectiles but the basic attack is quite slow, so you'd want to get up close but then immediately back up to make sure you don't get overwhelmed. It has a ranged attack similar to the bow and arrow though, so it would probably be best to mix up the close and personal with the glass cannon way of playing. But even this is simplifying the game because there's an in-depth permanent upgrade system which can construct a build really well with meaningful attributes. You can use resources to unlock powerful upgrades in the mirror in your room, like healing when entering each chamber and getting a second life, but there are also upgrades you can get by giving characters gifts. Gifting each of the Olympian gods gives you the chance to activate a boon that makes it so you encounter them more often during your run. This, combined with the weapon choice and the fact that each chamber shows the reward before you enter it, means that you can really craft your experience as much as possible. It also means that you can give yourself a specific kind of aim for each run that doesn't necessarily involve reaching the top. For example, if you want to unlock the next weapon and give gifts to certain characters, you might prioritize going into chambers with gifts and keys, even if that means sacrificing health and damage upgrades that are arguably required for reaching the top. If you find that you don't have many coins for the majority of your runs and feel like buying from fountains and Charon could help, you can get Deuce's boon, which increases the chances of coins appearing from broken urns, as well as prioritizing chambers that give coins. There's a level of choice that encourages the player to focus on building up the roster of permanent upgrades rather than getting to the final objective the fastest. The level and enemy design are also amazing. There's a lot more variety here compared to Arms of God. Each level has traps that you need to be wary of, as well as really fast-paced enemies, so you're constantly on the move and keeping your eye out for potential damage areas. Each area is also stunningly beautiful, with their own unique aesthetics. The boss battles are genuinely quite challenging. They're nothing super complicated, it's pretty easy to learn each boss's attack, but I like that there's a decent amount of variety. The most unique aspect of Hades is the way it involves the player in the narrative. Characters react to your actions throughout the game, and not only by who or what killed you, but by who you interact with. It's so cool for a god to say something along the lines of, "So I see you've met so-and-so." It makes the world feel so organic and reactive. It's strangely similar to an immersive sim in that way. The more you discover, the more the world and lore is revealed to you through the codex, which makes the game almost not feel like a roguelite because of how fluid this linear trajectory of revelation is laid out. I know that Arms of God also has a codex, but it gives very little in terms of backstory or lore. It actually serves more as a guidebook on how to defeat your enemies. The codex in Hades, on the other hand, not only provides in-depth lore, but actually keeps certain information from Zagreus until more interactions have been had or until more gifts have been exchanged. This encourages the player to explore every single aspect of the game, interacting with characters you otherwise wouldn't have paid attention to in order to understand the brilliantly written lore and world building better. They somehow designed it so naturally, to the point where the storytelling flows seamlessly between each run. It's incredible. Now I'm going to issue a minor spoiler warning here. It's really not that insane of a spoiler as it happens quite early on, but I wanted to issue the warning anyway. When it's revealed that Persephone is your mother and not Nyx, firstly I like how Zagreus finds out in kind of a meta way through the narrator, but also so many people react to this information. It makes it feel like the world is so much bigger than just Zagreus and his adventure. These are characters that have been alive for God knows how long, and so of course they would have complex relationships with one another and would react to what Zagreus is doing in their own unique ways. They're also super petty too. There are certain chambers where you can choose an upgrade between one of two gods, and inevitably the one you don't choose feels slighted, and they cause you to have a mini boss battle out of spite. It's amazing. But I'm just so blown away by the complexity of the gameplay and the complexity of the storytelling. You have so much more agency compared to most other roguelites in both how you curate your gameplay experience and how the narrative unfolds, that Hades basically stands on its own in a really saturated genre. Every single element of this game is so intricately designed. It's honestly amazing. Now I know I've been praising the storytelling in Hades, and rightly so if I do say so myself, but it does have a kind of glaring flaw that only really becomes noticeable after maybe the 5 to 6 hour mark. The narrative really doesn't evolve much past its initial premise. Some things pop up here and there, but for the most part, the goal of getting to the surface remains the same throughout the entire experience. Sure, the lore and world building is revealed over time, but not only does this start to feel like just interesting side content instead of important information, it slowly becomes essentially irrelevant to the main narrative, simply because the main narrative doesn't change. No matter how much you learn about Hades or Deucer or Nyx, your goal remains exactly the same. And what doesn't help is that when you die, there's no way to get a quicker route back to where you were, which isn't a big deal at the start of the game, but if you die in Elysium, you have to work all the way back up without shortcuts. This can turn the game into quite an annoying experience that actually discourages replayability because of the amount of time and effort it takes just to get to the same spot you were at last time. And even then, there's no guarantee that you won't just die again at the exact same spot. Now, there's an obviousness to this in that roguelikes and roguelites are supposed to be repetitive. That's one of the main selling points. But there's a narrative potential here that isn't really being fulfilled. What if what you learn ever so slightly changes the levels, or changes the way you approach each run? What if it changes Zagreus' goals, or changes how he views the underworld? I think they could have taken the storytelling a step further here to make the game even more immersive than it is. Moreover, the main incentive to keep playing is to get stronger to reach the top, which makes sense of course, but you get stronger incrementally over many runs without the narrative really changing at all, so it ends up feeling a bit tedious when you're doing run after run to collect enough resources to unlock one more permanent upgrade or one more dialogue option with a character. I started losing interest bit by bit because not enough was evolving to really keep my interest. There was something missing from the experience for me personally, a narrative potential that Hades got so close to fulfilling. But eventually, I found a game that does fill in this gap, that has an evolving narrative intertwined with interesting world building and well-designed gameplay. And that game is Returnal. This guy's woken up though, I think, if I'm not mistaken. There he is! Alright. No, you don't! Oh, hello. Jump. Do it. Jump. Oh my god. No. Oh, yes please. Take me. No way. I also fell into a gap. We love to see that, don't we? We just absolutely love to see it. That is so frustrating. Okay. Okay. I forgot about you. Okay. That was rude. Okay. I'm gonna die. Yeah, there it goes. That was a good run though. That was a decent run, I would say. This game is incredible. In my opinion, it does everything that Hades does, but better. It has amazing gameplay, stunningly beautiful visuals, and a really well-written narrative that immerses the player exceptionally well in this brilliant sci-fi mystery. Returnal is a third-person bullet hell roguelike, and I say roguelike and not roguelite for reasons that I'll get to later. You play as an astronaut called Selene, who crash lands on an alien planet called Atropos after following a mysterious signal called White Shadow. After fighting some aliens, she dies, immediately wakes up moments before the crash, and relives that horrific moment. Upon landing, she realizes that she's stuck in a time loop and decides to find the origin of the signal to see if it might give her answers as to what exactly is going on. Through her journey, she learns about the nature of the planet, its history, as well as uncovering the mystery of the time loop. And wait, is that a house? Well, who's this freaky astronaut? What's with this weird cube? Oh my god. But before getting into the narrative, I want to touch on the gameplay quickly because, like other roguelites I've discussed, there's a complex simplicity to its design. Returnal is quite fast-paced, and at some points can even feel overwhelming, but it really nails the balance that a 3D bullet hell needs, in that the challenge never overrides your ability to overcome it, nor do you ever become too powerful that levels become a breeze. You're able to move exceptionally fast during levels, not only with your base movement speed, but also with a dodge ability and, later on, a grappling hook that has an insane reach. The level design here isn't anything insane, but they're designed well enough to encourage movement and exploration. Returnal absolutely nails combat, which is brilliantly designed, and I'm kind of blown away with all of the mechanics and how well they interact with one another. You have a relatively small selection of weapons that feel very distinct from one another, and that complement certain playstyles. So far, so Hades. What's interesting here is how these weapons get upgraded. Firstly, weapons have a powerful alt fire mode that has a small cooldown, but that can be game changing, and they also have an additional attack you can see on the bottom here. Some need to be unlocked through weapon use, and some are available off the bat. Personally, I like the homing missile for the pistol and the wave for the Hollow Seeker, but my absolute favorite is this little guy. Also, on the bottom left, you can see this bar with a number on it. This refers to proficiency. The more enemies you kill, the higher the proficiency. Whatever number you see here is the level of the next gun you pick up, and so weapons are upgraded based on your performance. Adrenaline works in a similar way, but is far more punishing. As you kill enemies, your adrenaline increases, providing you small boosts here and there that, together, can really give you a step up in combat. The main difference with proficiency, however, is that proficiency can never go down, it can only increase, whereas adrenaline is completely lost the moment you get hit. You can build it back up at any point, but those bonuses that you worked hard to get are lost much quicker than they're gained, and some of them can be really game-changing depending on your situation. For example, the main currency of the game is obulite. Okay, so I'm editing the video right now, and as it turns out, I slightly mispronounced the term. It's obulite, not obulite. Apologies for the mistake. Whenever you hear me say obulite, it's supposed to be obulite, but I'm not going to re-record every time I've mispronounced it. This video has taken way too long to make, as is. Bit of a weird name for money, but then again, you're stuck in a time loop on an alien planet, so you know what, I'll be nice for once and I'll let it slide. You collect obulites by defeating enemies and finding them in rocks and chests. They're used to purchase upgrades at fabricators. These upgrades are usually artifacts, which provide powerful upgrades with no downsides and therefore can be quite expensive. One of the highest adrenaline levels gets you enhanced obulite collection. If there's an artifact that you desperately need, let's say for an upcoming boss fight, that particular adrenaline level all of a sudden becomes much more crucial than it may have been before, potentially leading to a much more cautious gameplay style to ensure you don't get hit. Fortunately, adrenaline isn't the only way to increase your diverse obulite portfolio. You can seek out the aforementioned rocks and chests, but there are other, more devious ways to level up your credit score, namely malignancy and parasites. Malignancy is kind of crazy because it exists on either side of the extremes. Either it won't affect anything at all, or it can destroy an entire run. It works in a high-risk, high-reward way. So malignancy chests can provide you with a really powerful weapon, but you will have a high risk of getting a malfunction. Malfunctions disable or greatly inhibit a certain ability, and can only be disabled using a consumable or by completing the task required to remove it. Sometimes the task is as simple as use a consumable, but sometimes the task is incredibly difficult, and now you're wondering if the reward was even worth it. You can get malignancy rocks too, which grant you a ton of obulites with a high risk of malfunction. Let's say you've cleared an entire level of enemies, and there are no more regular rocks or chests. Malignancy rocks may be the only way to afford the artifact you need for an upcoming encounter. Parasites are very similar, but both the benefits and costs are more powerful and can't be removed by a certain action. They can only be removed with a consumable or with this particular device. Malignancy is extremely optional, but parasites are downright necessary to finish the game, particularly the one that gives you a free revive. But there are many others that provide benefits that are just way too good to pass up on. With malignancy, malfunctions can be removed with an action, even if that action is quite difficult to accomplish, whereas you have to be so much much more selective with parasites exactly because they can only be removed under really specific circumstances. This kind of decision making in a bullet hell is fascinating, and it really makes you consider what would work best for the build that you're going for and for your particular playstyle. It's important to note that none of these aspects of the game carry through from run to run. 90% of the upgrades in this game are temporary, which is why it's much more of a roguelike than a roguelite. Permanent upgrades come either in the form of a kind of technology obtained after boss fights, or from these cubes that you need to place into a really specific device for it to become an upgrade that can be used in later runs. There's a particular stress that comes from finding a cube in the wild and trying to stay alive long enough to put it into the correct device. What's more is that these devices only appear after boss fights, so not only do you have to stay alive during the regular levels long enough, you also have to endure an entire boss fight just to unlock one permanent upgrade. If you die with the cube in hand, say goodbye to a potential permanent upgrade that is really rare to find. The enemy variety here is amazing, honestly. It's better than both Hades and Arms of God combined. Nothing revolutionary necessarily, but each area has its own particular flavor of enemy with their own attack patterns and weak spots that reward different styles of play. I despise these flying guys. They're super annoying and the range of their attack is absurd. In one behind the scenes interview, two of the devs discussed the kind of design ethos they had for the enemies.
You do push in a lot of these alien enemies, but there is a certain, let's say, earthly aspect to them as well. Deep sea creatures, for example.
Yeah, that was definitely the biggest inspiration for our creature designs. So there's something really unsettling about seeing these deep sea creatures with their bioluminescence. That kind of chaotic and organic movement, combined with like the lights, it feels really, really alien.
This dev diary is also fascinating. It's one of the best I've ever seen. The devs themselves are stuck in a time loop in a forest as they're talking about the game, and the diary is kind of a short film in a way. If you haven't watched it, you absolutely should. Boss fights are also very well thought out and provide a pretty decent challenge. Again, nothing groundbreaking, but just a good example of taking everything the players learn and distilling it into a single combat encounter. That final boss fight though is the definition of hell, oh my god. The way exploration works in this game is truly unique to the genre. Most roguelites and roguelikes work linearly. You go from chamber to chamber without the ability to backtrack, but Returnal takes a completely different approach. It acts almost like a Metroidvania in a way, where you're encouraged to backtrack and explore, especially when you unlock permanent abilities and commence a new run, allowing you access to areas you previously weren't able to go. It's a sort of mix between Dead Cells and Ori and the Blind Forest, and I love this kind of design. I found myself clearing an entire area and then going around scouring resources and making tough decisions about malignancy, parasites, obulites, and artifacts before moving on to the next area. Each area is really well designed too, feeling very distinct not only visually but also in its level design. The opening area feels claustrophobic and grimy, whereas the Crimson Desert feels almost endless as you traverse these sandy ruins. And then there's the Derelict Citadel, which encourages much more movement and traversal as you take on these automatons. In Hades, the levels look different for sure, but they all play about the same, whereas in Returnal, each area requires a completely different playstyle, which I really appreciate. Returnal also fixes one of the main problems with Hades that I mentioned before, namely being able to fast travel to previous locations. Once you've unlocked the gate to the Derelict Citadel from the Crimson Wastes, you can directly access it from the overgrown ruins without having to go through the Crimson Wastes again. What's more is that if you choose to travel directly to the Derelict Citadel from the claustrophobic opening area, there's a device that you can pick up which drastically increases your proficiency, meaning that you're not entering one of the final areas at a disadvantage. This completely eliminates the tedium of having to go through every area one by one like in Hades, allowing the game to be much more replayable. Now, if you die in the Citadel itself or in the tower, you can go back to where you were much quicker than in Hades. It makes for a much more enjoyable experience, and I'm glad that Housemarque, the developers of Returnal, included a system like this. Visually, this game is stunning. The graphics are insane, and the design of the enemies and the levels and the weapons are all top notch. There's not that much else to say honestly, and the same goes for the sound design. Every weapon sounds distinct. The same goes for the enemies, and the sound design generally really underlines the mysterious alien world. In the aforementioned dev diary, they also talk about the importance of sound design in a 3D bullet hell with the levels of verticality.
For a game like Returnal, it's absolutely critical to have as accurate spatial awareness as possible to assist you with making decisions during combat. The 3D audio was actually a great new way to enhance that feedback for players.
With this game being more of a roguelike than a roguelite, what kept me playing wasn't the promise of permanent upgrades to enhance each run, nor was it the attempt to overcome the severe difficulty increase that comes with each level like many other roguelikes. But instead it was the brilliantly told mystery narrative that drip feeds information in such a way that made me want to explore and learn more about this world. For the first time, the gameplay services the narrative, not the other way around. I was so intrigued by the house and the astronaut and why there's a time loop, but also resurrection here is treated differently in comparison to most other games in the genre. You can come across previous versions of yourself that have died, and you can even fight them if they've become corrupted. Audio logs found throughout the game are from previous versions of you that have explored and discovered more about the world. But even in a simpler way, resurrection is treated as a given in most of the games like this, so it's a breath of fresh air when resurrection is part of the mystery to uncover. And to be clear, like Hades, the main objective never really changes. You're always looking for the source of the signal, but even this is part of the mystery as we don't even really know why Celine was looking for it in the first place. Zagreus' mission is made pretty clear quite early on in the game, but the same can't be said for Returnal. Not only that, but the underworld acts simply as a setting for Hades, whereas Atropos feels almost like another character entirely in Returnal. The world building and main narrative are completely interlocked because the planet is part of the main mystery, so the more you learn about the lore of this species and what happened on this planet, the more you can learn about yourself, why you're here, what the signal is, and so on. This even extends to the arcade mode called Tower of Sisyphus. Essentially, you go from level to level gaining a multiplier, and it's all about scores and leaderboards and the like, but even here, there's a narrative that connects to the main game. Every aspect of this game is founded on the story and themes to the point where the side activity that's more of an arcade game has a significant narrative element. And actually, concerning the main game, Returnal throws a bit of a curveball at the player. I'm going to issue a spoiler warning now, please go and play it, it's amazing. Once you defeat the final boss called Nemesis, Celine is actually able to go home and live out the rest of her life normally. Or so it would seem. The entire game so far has actually just been the first act, and the second act begins when you return to Atropos and a completely new mystery begins. It's amazing. If you're curious as to why you're not seeing this footage on screen, that's because I couldn't get it. Look, I never said I was good at games, alright? I've tried to take on Nemesis like 3 times now and I just can't do it, so I had to make do with what I had. I apologize for my inadequacy. This complete subversion of the roguelike template not only leads to new gameplay opportunities because of how Atropos changes, but the narrative implications are really interesting too, and it adds yet another layer of storytelling complexity by having the objectives evolve and change throughout the game, which is incredibly rare in roguelites and roguelikes. New mysteries arise with a renewed interest in understanding what the hell is going on. Although the gameplay is really fun and very well designed, it was the narrative that made me come back again and again. Returnal fulfills the potential of this genre. It can be so much more than just gameplay. There can be a linear narrative that unfolds naturally and that actually involves the gameplay mechanics specific to this genre in its storytelling. This is why you should play roguelites and roguelikes. Because of the way death is treated in this genre, they have a narrative opportunity that simply doesn't exist in most other games, and that can provide a level of immersion that most other games simply can't. Fortunately, this type of world building and writing seems to have become increasingly popular in recent years, with the release of not only Returnal of course, but God of War Ragnarok's DLC named Valhalla, which is essentially Nordic therapy, and the much more recent Saros. It's fascinating to see a genre like this being used to explore themes of loss and pain and trauma. I hope to see even more games like this in the future because they provide the most fulfilling experience in my opinion. Don't get me wrong, I'll always come back to games like Jotun Slayer or Balatro or Megabonk, but games like Returnal provide more than just an addictive gameplay loop. They have a way of perfecting the formula, combining the addictive gameplay with amazing storytelling and lore. These are the entries into this genre that I'm the most excited for, and I look forward to seeing more of these in the years to come. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.